Nah. But it got us thinking about Blake Griffin and a bunch of these guys who will be coming back. His return game in Detroit, November 5th, as a member of the Nets, played there last year, but less than 1,000 fans. James Harden, scheduled back in Houston with a full capacity. So, look, he won MVP in Houston, 6-time first-team All-NBA there, and second leading scorer in franchise history. Then KD will play in San Francisco for the first time in front of fans on January 29th. He was a 2-time champ in the Bay, 2-time Finals MVP, 3-time All-NBA selection. And Kyle Lowry, Mr. Raptor, returns to Toronto on February 3rd. He's a champion and a 6-time All-Star and the franchise leader in assists. And lastly, Ben Simmons. We don't have a return date for you, but his future in Philly is unsure at best at this point. He's a 3-time All-Star, former Rookie of the Year, and made first-team All-Defense twice. So here it is, all in writing. A lot of dates to circle on your calendar. Brian, which one jumps out to you?
Well, I personally only care about the Kyle Lowry game because that's going to be a celebratory moment where he's going to be cheered loudly. By the way, Danny Green is making his return to Toronto tonight for the first time since winning the title.
That's right.
And he's still not getting his ring. Still not getting his ring tonight.
Gosh.
I've never seen anything like it. Sorry, I hijacked this segment. I just thought I should bring that out. But another event in Toronto I'm looking forward to, Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, will they have the statue ready for him by then? By the time it's a little quick for a bronze, but he'll get cheered. I actually think James Harden is going to get cheered too, and I think Kevin Durant will be cheered. Those two, like James Harden, he had an incredible career for the Rockets. It didn't end well, but he's Mr. Hughes. He's Mr. Hughes. He did so much for them.
You think he's going to get cheered? I don't think he's going to get cheered.
I do. I actually. Well, look, they got Jalen Green now. Everybody's happy. So. Look, it was a messy exit, but I think people will forgive and forget.
By that time, they're going to be 30 games under 500.
True.
They're not going to be happy.
Yeah, I'm with Brian.
But the real answer to your question, George, the real answer is whatever Ben Simmons' return game is.
Okay, speaking of which,
that is going to be.
You've got some information on that, right?
Look, we're all watching to see, is Ben going to show? Okay, this is the first game that the Sixers are playing without him. It's a preseason game, but you still get Doc money if he doesn't show up. He's being fined for not showing up. Brian reported over the weekend that his first check didn't go through, but. From what I understand, this was never about the money. He's still status quo right now. Now, we're going to have to keep checking in on this. We'll check in next week and every game that he misses, because each game is going to be money that comes out of the check. But when and if Ben gets traded and he eventually returns to Philadelphia, I do not expect that to be kind. And I think that speaks to the larger point of, from Ben's side, if he doesn't show up in Philly, or if he ended up, at some point showing up and making things uncomfortable there, what kind of Ben Simmons would even show up? At that point, things are so toxic there.
Wait, but do you think that's a possibility that he could still show up?
It depends on how long this goes, right, Brian? What's your? We've seen standoffs before.
Yeah, I think we actually have to look at the NFL because. Mm-hmm. This is a situation that is not really we see in the NBA very often. When guys haven't shown, it's because they haven't signed. We don't see guys under contract not show up. So in the NFL, what they have been doing recently is holding in, where they show up and basically don't play. And I think if hindsight is 20/20 here, that's what Ben Simmons should have done. He should have arrived in Philadelphia, sat on the bench and said, I am just not going to play. I've got a sore back, or kind of do what John Wall is doing, which even though it's an agreement with the team, he's essentially sidelined until they can trade him. By holding out, it creates this whole series of unanticipated and unprecedented moments like this money that was due him. And the Sixers took a NFL-like approach to it, which is they put the money that they owed him, $8 million, they put it in escrow instead of giving it to him so they could chip the fines off as they go along. Had they waited until he got the actual fine money to be a high number, he would have had IOUs due to the Sixers. This way, they can actually take the actual money away from him with the intent of never giving it back. That is what they do in the NFL. So this is turning into an NFL-style holdout. And by the way, that is not a direction the NBA wants to go in because it obviously creates a lot of problems and renegotiations in the NFL they don't have in the NBA.
Ramona, obviously this will put a lot on Joel Embiid's shoulders, which pretty big shoulders, right? Pretty broad shoulders.
Yep.
But is there another gear, I guess, for Joel in this particular situation.
You think so? I mean, he's going into this season thinking he's added moves to his game. There's going to be no doubt of where the offense is running through. He's going to take more shots per game than he probably ever has. That's his goal, at least. And I think that he sets up, and we had those MVP odds. If Ben Simmons does not play for the Sixers this year, I think you really have to look at Joel Embiid. He was the runner-up last year, and if he can play enough games, he should be in there. And especially if they play well, they're really high on Tyrese Maxey. They really like him in that spot, and they're very high on this. And in a lot of ways, that lineup right there is geared more towards Embiid's skill set than when they have to do the making room for each other with Ben Simmons.
And Brian, with Tobias Harris, I mean, he's another max player. Like, we don't even talk about him, but he's certainly someone that can elevate his game at this point, right?
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity for Tobias. He thought he should have been an all-star last year. He wasn't really that close to making it, but that door is open. But here's the thing. They're taking away one of the top 3 or 4 defensive players in the league off of their roster. They are not going to just not feel that. They're going to feel it. They were the number 1 seed in the East last year, bona fide championship contender. You don't lose a guy like Ben Simmons and all of a sudden are still in the same spot. I do agree with Ramona. I mean, I was somebody who was beating the drum for Embiid to be MVP last year, but he missed so many games that it became very hard to vote for him. But that's the thing with Embiid. He misses games. He got hurt then in the playoffs. If he's not missing games, he's playing through injuries. So, it's one thing to have a team like they had last year. It's another thing to not have Ben Simmons and then knowing that Embiid's going to miss a significant percentage of games. I just don't think they're the same team without him. And that's why it's a conundrum for Philly, because they can't just trade him for nothing. They've got to trade him for players or player that can keep that same level. And it is not an easy level to maintain because, Ben Simmons is a very good player.
All right, we'll keep an eye on it, certainly. Up next, Zion says he's done. Lakers gave up 123 points to the Nets without any of their top stars, and afterwards, AD was not pleased with the Lakers' performance.
Oh, we're way behind. Getting movement on offense, quality shots, defensively, talking, getting our schemes right, rebounding, very huge. We're not boxing out. And that was the main takeaway. Just, offensive count, we're not really too worried about it. Especially when we get Brian, Melo, TA, Russ out there where we are. And we had to do a better job defensively, especially blocking out.
So, Ramona, do you share AD's concern after Lakers preseason game number 1?
No. What's he talking? They're fine. Like, he's the only guy who played even a little.
Yeah.
Only of the regulars. I actually thought they looked okay. I thought Malik Monk looked really good the other day.
Sure.
But I actually think it's a good sign that Anthony Davis is saying those words.
Bingo.
Because he's got a sense of urgency. And it reminds, I've said this before, it's almost like if you close your eyes, last year didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, the Lakers are back to that 2020 team that won the championship, where they're fired up, they're hungry, they're not coming off that really short layoff. Where I was talking to a coach yesterday in the Lakers where they said, that short layoff after the bubble, they were fried. And I think that team did not have the same spirit and hunger that they did in 2020. Whereas this year, they have the vets who are coming back are hungry because they didn't win last year and they had a nice long break. And then guys like Russ, Carmelo, DeAndre Jordan, they haven't won. And they have the hunger of veterans who are here to win a ring. And so they really have a good spirit to them. Anthony Davis is right in that they look behind. But look at the schedule coming up for the Lakers, okay, George? Their first 10 games, I went through to look at the schedule, and that looks like a team that could easily start 9-1, 8-2.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the schedule.
Yeah.
Okay, the first 3 games, those are tough games. So let's say they go 2-1 in those 3.
Yeah.
Look at that strip.
Thunder,
Cavs, Rockets. Those should be 5 wins right there.
Yeah.
That game against the Trailblazers, that'll be a tough one.
Yeah.
But they have a really easy opening schedule in terms of win percentage last season. And it's always like that for teams that are going to be on in the backloaded schedule after the Super Bowl.
Tons of ABC
Lakers,
games,
Warriors,
nationally televised games.
So this early part of the schedule for a team that doesn't have a lot of returners, that has a lot of new guys, like, this is a great way to start.
Speaking of new guys, a lot of new guys, I believe 11 new players on this particular roster. Clinton, what do you make of the fit?
I'd like to see them play a little in the preseason. I mean, honestly, I understand that the schedule is soft and so on and so forth, but we still don't really know. And it's a little confusing. AD says nothing's going right. LeBron says the practices have been better than ever. So how about we get a product together on the court so we can at least have an idea of what the big 3 is going to be, or +1 is going to be. And look, I'm not really certain that that'll happen in the preseason, but I'd like to see it happen once. Give me a quarter. Give me a half. You know what I mean?
I think it will.
Show me what it looks like.
that,
how much are we going to see? I'm wondering because, if AD's saying this now and LeBron's saying this then, I'm as excited as I've been to see this Laker team in a long time because of exactly what you said. They seem to be aligning.
I would expect, and Ramona, you tell me because you've covered this team a lot longer than I have, I expect them to probably play a couple of games, 2 or 3 games together, a few minutes here and there, and then that last one, everyone will basically take off again. But those last